We're gonna go into Bo Nickal. Is he gonna be a future UFC champ? And what is he all about? And we're gonna start right now. So real quick background, I think some of the main aspects is that when you watch Bo Nickal, okay, I still remember him wrestling Miles Martin, and Miles Martin was a returning NCAA champ, and they had a dual meet in the BJC. Okay, this is at Penn State. He went out and decked this dude in the first period, okay? He's a three-time NCAA champ, a one-time runner-up. He's an absolute animal. First huge tournament of submissions. He fought against Gordon Ryan, okay? He has incredible awareness. He's also absurdly strong. One of our guys that wrestled in college and was an NCAA All-American, Pete Renda, also discussed how Bo Nickal didn't look that strong, but he just had an innate ability to use his leverage, which in turn made him have that mat strength, that incredible strength on the mat that you can really, you struggle to sort of quantify. Now, some of the other big aspects is that he's really, really explosive and he's very, very funky. Sort of reminds me of a more versatile Lyoto Machida. Yes, I just said that. A more versatile Lyoto Machida. One of the greatest of all times, and I believe Bo, towards the end of his career, might be higher than Lyoto Machida as far as the UFC is concerned. Another unique aspect is that he's got 2 official fights in the UFC. He fought multiple times on the Contender Series as well, but one of the other aspects here is that he's not rushing his career, okay? We're here towards the end of 2023, and he's probably gonna take more time before he gets into his next fight. Mainly, I believe, because he knows the technical aspect of combat sports. He wrestled internationally representing the United States. He's got all that time in jiu-jitsu. He's got all that time in wrestling, and he understands that it takes time, and he doesn't have a ton of experience with throwing hands. And I think that's also going to be a big aspect, is that because of his funky ability, because of his incredible body awareness, because of his mat strength, that's going to all play a huge role into what he's doing. I also think there's one unsaid aspect here, is that I think he has an amazing sense of what his opponents are doing. Okay, so when you're watching him, I don't know if this is purposeful. I don't know if he does a ton of video review. I don't know if he studies his opponents very, very well, but he has an incredible ability to have a sense of where his opponents are going to be. Okay, and I think that that's obviously a key in combat sports. I sort of relate that to pre-snap reads in football, right? It's one of the absolute aspects that you have to have. Let's look at some of those strength characteristics that he has, and then what you guys can do with that. After you enjoy the video, how can you apply it to your own training? I love the walkouts icon. So this is a Jorge Masvidal. I believe that he runs this. Oh gosh, I think that's the other. So I think that's the other big thing here, is that when you watch Nickal, he is so strong, so it in turn makes his hands very, very heavy. So is he the best technical scrapper right here? And this, I think this was his first fight. No, but his hands are heavy, clearly. And I think that as he gets even more and more and more precise, that's going to be real dangerous, and that's why I do believe he could be a better version of Lyoto, is that Machida had heavy hands, and he was in and out, and I think Bo is that type of dude. That's how he wrestled. That's how he moves, okay? And I think that's really, really hard to teach. I also did want to mention, too, that Bo married Maddie Holmberg, who was they both went to Penn State. That's where I went to Penn State. I was on the track team. Maddie was also, I believe, an All-American in track and field at Penn State. Boom. Dude, okay, so here I think this is on the Contender, if I remember. Big takedown, and that's the other big factor, is that if you're a good wrestler and someone at his ability, with how good he is at wrestling, and he has the background with submission work, it's really hard to avoid that type of ground and pound and that type of submission work. I think that's just the other big aspect around wrestling, and being, like, to me, the foundation of what is going to create a great combat athlete. And if you can look at wrestling and what that means, right, I think that when you start to look at the wrestling background, I think the way that you want to train as a combat athlete then is like, let's focus on how to make you the best wrestler, how to make you the most explosive individual. And some of those big aspects too is like, we've got to train athletes as fighters, right? We have to train them as fighters. We don't need to train them as running backs. We don't need to train these combat athletes as big hulking powerlifters. We need to look at the strength characteristics that they need to develop in the realm of wrestling or in the realm of their combat sport, and then really focus on that. And that comes down to pound for pound strength, relative strength, being as elusive as possible, so that dynamic trunk control. And that's something that we've even mentioned in one of our garage strength videos on the top gym exercises for wrestling. Is when I worked with two-time world bronze medalist Nick Gwiazdowski, one of the biggest aspects around Nick was that he had tremendous trunk control. He wasn't the absolute strongest person in the gym. You know, we've got discus throwers, shot putters here. They're freaks. Nick was strong, but he wasn't absurdly strong. But when you tied up with him, this foundation in the trunk is what creates the ability to move people. It's very similar to Barry Sanders' agility, but the agility from a combat athlete is in their hands, it's in their knees, it's in their hips. They're changing at the level. So if we can train that dynamic trunk control effectively, along with that pound for pound strength and that explosive aspect, now you're gonna see these dudes can scramble. They've got really good endurance, and you're gonna see that right here with Nickal. Oh my gosh. Let's rewind that. So what I want to do also, I've been challenged because I've come up with some reflexive movements based off of how I diagnose Marshawn Lynch, based off how I diagnose some of Barry Sanders' moves. I want to just point out here. So if he takes a little bit of that step, that little bit of a lunge forward, he gets that little duck, okay, right? That step forward and then change of the level right here. This is the key concept with wrestlers, is that I'm going to take this step forward. I'm almost making it seem as though I'm going in for a little knee pick, right? I'm going to take this little step, lunge, okay, step, lunge, hand over head, boom. So what happens is like this individual fighter is looking at this like, okay, he's changing his levels. He's coming in to take me down. He's coming in to take a shot. And they immediately might drop their head to almost initiate a sprawl. But now being a well-trained striker, he can come in with that. I'm almost wondering, is he trying to bring the fist or the elbow as he drops down? So it's like, I've got to come up with some type of movement here. And then he gets that nice takedown. This dude's basically stunned or out, and then it's just finished the match, right? And then you can get them in a bad position, lead to a submission, and then the match is over. And so that's the unique part here, is that you've got somebody who's such a good wrestler, they can set these moves up. They can set up the takedowns, but then the takedown is what the individual is worried about. While they're worried about the takedown, a strike comes, that stuns them, then they're on the ground, then you can take advantage of that new situation that you're in. And that's what makes wrestlers who are good strikers so effective, but also he's very elusive. You can see how he's changing his level. Just, there's a lot of issues or a lot of stuff. The funkiness reminds me so much of some of these top fighters from, you know, the late 2000s, early 2010s. So I believe this is his first official fight in the UFC, Jamie Pickett. And this was just sort of embarrassing, where it was like, all right, how quickly was it? 2.5 minutes, 250. Again, the control, the weight, and that's the other thing, is that once you figure out how to have, you know, one of the big aspects with wrestling is you got to be heavy on the head, and that ability, learning how to use your body control, learning how to use that mass. Dude, just look, and Pickett looked like he was crying there, like, please don't do this to me. So this is Val Woodburn. Now we're going to see, this is going to be a fast one, right? Ooh. He's done. That might be a quick stoppage. I think there was complaints about that. But let's watch this again. It's like that lunge. So he's got that lunge, right? Now he stays up with his hips. He gives a little, he gives a little inside step. That's that lunge again. So here, that little step, and then more pressure from the inside of his left foot. More pressure from the inside of his left foot. He's got good ankle mobility, good drive from that. Gives that nice reach. While he gives that nice reach, he's actually still protected from another strike himself. And then all of a sudden that leads back to this here. Another quick setup right there. Boom. Season opening from that big left arm. And just in and out. Look at how quickly he's in, boom, and then back out. It's like he doesn't really change his trunk right here. Okay, you see that? Now he's dropping that left knee. He's dropping that left knee here, and he's back out from that right quad. So the interesting part here is you could actually set up a reflexive movement where you go in and then out. And that's where you can have bands attached behind you and create this series that you can actually execute in training with your resistance work. Oh my God. Okay, so let's go in, back out again, right? That's the whole aspect. It's in and out. And that's what, when I say how funky he was as a wrestler, when I see how funky he is here as a fighter, it's in and out. And it's in and out from angles that aren't classic. It's just so quick. He's either changing his level, coming in, and he's protected and comes back out, or he's changing his level, coming in, and then leading into that takedown, or he's changing his level in, comes back out while he's dropping a bomb. And that's just incredible awareness, right? That's incredible feeling there. Right on the freaking kisser, this dude's done. So I think that when you start to break down, this is where you're going to see some of the crazy stuff he would do wrestling wise. It's like he was the king of just being in these positions where you'd be like, wait, how did he even take this? How did this kid, with the Miles Martin match, I think he got taken down and was on his back, and then the next thing you know, he was on top pinning him. And I think that's the funkiness that I'm talking about. That's the funkiness that I believe is going to get him to the top. And I think that as an athlete or as a coach, what we can do is then take this and you go, so inside peak strength, we lay out our combat training, okay? So we can look at this and say, we've got to focus on being extremely explosive, right? We've got to focus on that pound for pound strength. We don't want to get super, super big. We want to be neurologically efficient. So we've got to focus on explosiveness. That's where Athlete Day, that's where the plyometrics, the jump series comes into play. And then when you start to get more advanced inside peak strength as an athlete, you're starting to do things that you're moving, you're changing directions unilaterally, you're changing directions bilaterally. You get to learn how to control that trunk. You're doing other traditional exercises, let's say a front squat, but then we're doing contrast method work with that to help improve your movement patterns out on the mat or inside of the cage. So these are some of the key concepts that you guys can use. Focus on that dynamic trunk control, improve your explosive capability, and focus on relative strength. That means pound for pound strength. That's gonna help you with your endurance, and that's gonna help you setting up those big monster takedowns or knockouts that we're seeing from Bo Nickal. I believe Bo Nickal will become a UFC champ in the future, and I believe he has the potential to go down as a top 10 fighter of all time. If you guys need help with your training, head over to peakstrength.app, the Google Play Store or the Apple iOS Store, because remember, freaks, if you want to become a champion, you've always got to cultivate your power. Peace.